Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a former Boeing 737 pilot and a member of the PMDG 737 tech team. In today's tutorial, let's have a look at the taxi procedures in the PMDG Boeing 737 in-flight simulator 2024. We've just completed the before taxi checklist and are now ready to request our taxi clearance by air traffic control. So, assuming that our clearance has received, we are going to write it down in the FMS. So right now we are clear to taxi runway 13 left via Lima, Bravo and Alpha 5, which is pretty much the clearance we expected in the pre-flight. So that's going to be Lima, Bravo and Alpha 5. Now you can either use the standard taxi charts for your taxi, or if you want to be a little bit tricky, you go over here to the overview chart, you go full screen and then you just zoom all the way in, which gives you a live taxi chart, which is a pretty nice feature by Navigraph. You can even go track up over here so that you actually see that with your actual airplane track on the top side, which is a really nice feature. Alright, so now that our taxi clearance has been received, we are going to turn on the taxi and the turn-off lights, and we are going to release the park and brake down here. Now, to make it a little bit easier to see, let's go ahead and turn this back to a north up location. And then let's start taxiing. We always start the taxi by advancing our thrust levers to the full stop and quickly pulling them back again. This is to trigger the takeoff configuration warning system, so that if you had any problems, for example the flaps may not be extended exactly to the same angle, or you may have forgotten a step during your pre-flight, or a common mistake amongst flight simmers, you armed the speed brakes, which you do not do on Boeing aircraft. That's an Airbus thing, not a Boeing thing. Then the takeoff configuration warning would sound. So let's go ahead and try that and get our airplane moving. So you go full forward and then you go back to idle. Now, a good breakaway thrust for the aircraft is about 30 to 35% N1, in some occasions up to 40% may be needed, depending on whether it's going uphill, how heavy you are, and other factors. Normally, about 30 to 35% is absolutely sufficient to get the 737 moving. You do not need to conduct a brake check in the 737, because the brake pressure indicator is right in front of you over here, showing you the pressure in the actual braking system. Now let's take a moment to talk about taxi speeds. Maximum speed in turns is 10 knots, maximum speeds on apron 15, on long straight lines 30, and on a runway when you're backtracking you can go all the way up to 50 knots. In contaminated surfaces, you may need as little as 3 to 5 knots to avoid the airplane from skidding, so always keep that in mind. Now let's talk about taking turns. As you can see by going to the outside, the nose wheel is quite a bit behind your location, around 2 meters, and the main wheels are 20 meters behind. So in order to keep the main wheels close to the center line, we need to use an oversteering technique. So always wait until the taxi line is somewhere to the side of you, then enter the turn, and as you can see on the outside here, that nicely keeps the center line in between your main wheels. Pretty much like this. So let's now talk about the proper technique of managing your speed during the taxi. The 737 does not have as much of a problem with your brakes as other aircraft, such as, for example, Airbus aircraft have. However, you generally want to keep the taxi speed within a certain range, and to do that we are normally using thrust up to 40% to accelerate up to the maximum allowable speed, so for example 30 knots, and when you go back to idle the airplane will slowly start to decelerate. Now when it's doing that we let it decelerate to a proper speed like 20 knots or so, and then you add thrust in order to start accelerating again, and that way you slightly vary your taxi speed in order to minimize the usage of thrust while at the same time keeping a moderate and appropriate taxi speed. Now, in order to keep the airplane on the center line, the best trick for you to use is to imagine that you are sitting just slightly to the left of the center line. The main wheel is just over here in the middle of the pedestal. So basically, if you keep your right knee on the center line, then going to the outside view, you can see we are taxiing right on top of the center line down here. Last, let's talk about holding short of a taxiway. And there are quite a couple of things to take into account when holding short of something. The main problem is the angle that you cannot see in front of the aircraft. So around 15 meters are cut off in front of you that you cannot see. That means in order to stop the airplane at an appropriate distance from the holding position, you actually gotta taxi until the feature that you want to hold short of is basically going through the glare shield over here. Only when it's down there you are going to be at an appropriate distance. Let me demonstrate this. So we are supposed to hold short of the runway here. It may be very easy just to stop somewhere over here thinking like, yeah, I'm close to the holding point. But when you move outside, you can see how far from the holding point we still are. If you're doing that and a taxiway is immediately behind you, your tailplane may be so far, or may reach so far over that taxiway that a collision may occur if someone tries to taxi behind you. Therefore, always be sure that you hold short correctly. So let me demonstrate this to you. We are slightly uphill over here, so we will be using some 40% thrust to get the airplane moving. Now let me go back to idle, and now we move until the hold short line vanishes round about here at the glare shield. And if we now look outside, you can see now we're still some 5 meters from the holding point, but a little bit of distance doesn't hurt. But don't make it much more than this. This is really what you want to pay attention to while you're taxiing the airplane. Now, when we're holding short of somewhere, let's go ahead and set the park and brake, and also turn the taxi and turn off lights off, which is a good indicator to anyone on the ground around you that you do not intend to start moving again. And that is everything I got for you today. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this taxi tutorial interesting. As always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and then I'm really looking forward to see you guys again on the next one. And if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you on the next one, where we're going to discuss the takeoff technique.